Please.
There's David. Oh, I thought you weren't going to make it.
On time.
You got the blue shirt memo.
Good evening, and welcome everyone to the special closed session meeting of Monday, June 10th. Calling the meeting to order at 5:30. Roll call, please, Ms. Clerk.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Here.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Here.
Mayor Infante.
Here.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, if you'd lead us in a pledge, please.
Happy to. If you turn to the flag and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Attorney, if you would tell us what we're going to do in closed session.
Be happy to, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. The city holds this closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1 to discuss the public employee performance evaluation of the city manager, and thereafter pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 to conduct labor negotiations in conference with the city's designated representative, Chelsea O'Sullivan, city attorney, regarding the city manager and unrepresented employee.
Very good. In that case, shall we?
Public comment?
Public comment.
Thank you, Robert. Do we have any public comment?
Chirp, chirp.
Yes. Since we have no public comment, can we adjourn to closed session then? closed session. Madam Attorney, if you would give us the results of that, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, certainly. Coming out of the Public Employee Performance Evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, the employee performance evaluation was held, and there's no further reportable action. On the conference with labor negotiator under Government Code Section 54957.6, there's no reportable action, and the matter is subject to further negotiation. Thank you.
In that case, we will bring the closed session to completion at, looks like about 6:29. We'll start again in a minute. Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting, Monday, June 10th, 2024. The City Council, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Roll call, please, Ms. Clerk.
Councilmember Clark. Here. Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Here.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Here.
Mayor Infante.
Here.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin, I believe you're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would. Flags up here.
Pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so under proclamations, we have one of those today. This is the Women's Veterans Day Proclamation. Whereas President Harry S. Truman signed into law the Integration Act on June 12, 1948, enabling women to serve as permanent, regular members of the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, and Air Force. And whereas women veterans are one of the fastest-growing demographics within the United States military and are expected to reach nearly 20% of the veteran population by 2045. We are up, okay. Whereas she raised her hand, a collaborative initiative was formed by Santa Barbara County to provide opportunities for women veterans in Santa Barbara County to find community, purpose, and strength in their identity as veterans. And Santa Barbara County is home to women veterans who have served our country with honor and dignity, often in dangerous situations, including service in World War II through the current conflicts. And whereas through their selfless sacrifice, courage, dedication, and honorable military service, women veterans have safeguarded our heritage and freedom while providing valuable service and expertise to our society. And women veterans have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also at the forefront of numerous major progressive social change movements in history, paving the way for future generations to enjoy the unalienable rights, duties, and responsibilities afforded equally to all residents of the United States of America. And whereas each woman veteran is extraordinary in her own way, proving that women working inside the home or outside the academia, science, technology, business, labor, governance, and more maintain critical roles in every sphere of society. And whereas the City of Solvang is committed to supporting and recognizing the bravery of all women veterans, including those who have made the ultimate sacrifice and laid down their lives to protect our state and country. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Mark Infante, along with the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, do hereby proclaim June 12th as Women Veterans Day and encourage all people in our city to recognize and honor the contributions of our women's veterans and their families to the principles of democracy, individual freedom, and human rights. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the City of Solvang to be affixed on this 10th day of June in 2024. So let me sign this. Are you going to accept this for us?
I'd like to thank Mayor and Council for this proclamation. This is our first one for the She Raised Her Hand. My name is Allison Wales, and I've been here before for the North County Rape Crisis Center, but I'm also part of the Santa Barbara County Commission for Women. And a little over a year ago, the county applied as a commission for a grant, and a little piece of that had to do with outreach to women veterans. And it thankfully kind of morphed into its own little creation between the Santa Barbara Veterans Collaborative and the Allen Hancock College. God bless Hancock College, actually, for what it's been able to turn into. So the commission gave a little money, and it's thankfully the women's culinarians and winemakers this past spring donated to us $20,000 to help this initiative gain its feet. We're literally still building the website for our members. The ladies that we have in our membership literally are from their early 20s to 80. And it is growing, and we're glad that we'll be able to bring this forth for the whole county here. And so I thank you for your recognition. And I know the ladies that were in Santa Maria a few days ago, they walked away and they're very touched by it, because this is a recognition that they don't necessarily always feel, and some women vets do struggle in different ways. So thank you for this recognition and your continued support. Thank you. Oh, and if you know of anyone as a veteran, back there, women's veteran, go to our website, She Raised Her Hand, join, and we will invite you to things that are happening throughout the year. So please, sign up. Need ya.
I will honor vets, but if you ever heard me sing, that would be discouraging.
Well, there you go.
Thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate that. I'm glad to be able to support the women veterans. Okay, so we're on to public communications for non-agenda and consent items. Madam Clerk, if you would present that to the record.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and on consent. Time limit is 3 minutes, and we will start with in-person public comments first.
I have Dan Martin on the first list. Where is he? There he is. Yes, sir. Got to get the right Martin.
Okay, is this on? Yes, okay. Okay, good evening, Mayor Infante and other council members. Last time I spoke before you, I discussed the traffic at Alamo Pintado Road and Old Mission Drive that I had monitored on a weekday. I threw out a bunch of numbers about left turns, right turns, U-turns, pedestrians, and I think it was a little bit too much. I think my eyes kind of glazed over. So tonight I'd like to give you two numbers. I did the same thing with a friend. We went and monitored traffic at that intersection of Alamo Pintado Road and Old Mission Drive. So two numbers, 1 hour, 814 vehicles. That's how many autos came to that intersection from 4 different directions. So that's 1 hour in the afternoon on a Saturday afternoon and 814 cars. Now, with the proposed Wildwood development at Site C, there could be another 154 to 222 vehicles from this development added to this intersection. Right now, there is only one entrance and exit combination for this development onto Old Mission Drive, and this intersection will have to be used by those residents exiting Wildwood development. This development is not right. This development is not only going to add all this congestion at this intersection, but it will also add to the danger at this intersection. It'd be a safety factor there. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Steve Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Councilman. My name is Stephen Martin. I live at 698 Hillside Drive. Wanted to mention a couple things about traffic also. We need to push ahead in our view to get a roundabout on the books and get it ready to go for the 246 Alamo Pintado intersection. It will be more efficient, cars will go faster, and it will alleviate some of the pressure on the intersection of Alamo Pintado and Old Mission Drive. Secondly, I think we have to think seriously about eliminating U-turns at that intersection. I understand it benefits the owner of Mercantile and the businesses there because people coming from Solvang or from San Ynez turn up Alamo Pintado and then make a U-turn. But I don't think that that was the case under the old management of the shopping center there, and there is an opportunity for people to get into the shopping center from two other entrances along Old Mission Drive. The hazard of a U-turn there can't be overstated. There have been a lot of near misses, and it adds to the congestion. And thirdly, I think we have to seriously consider eliminating the parking on Old Mission Drive. Right now, people park on both sides, and those who turn into Old Mission Drive to enter the shopping center there at Mercantile come very close to cars that are parked there. The street width is very close there, and so we have people that are turning in and not having much room between themselves and the parked cars. Lastly, I'd like to just mention that the analysis of this development that's proposed at Wildwood suggested that the folks in Wildwood would not contribute to traffic mileage or traffic in general because they would walk to the shopping center. But when you figure it out, if you have 100 units and roughly, say, 200 or more adults who maybe go to the shopping center twice a week from Monday to Friday, that puts it 400 people divided by 5 is 80 people a day. And that puts it at approximately over an 8-hour period, which is generally when people go, maybe a little longer, maybe a little less, but when they go, that's 8 people an hour. I'm sorry, 10 people an hour. It takes 25 seconds for the average pedestrian to cross there. So you can add 250 seconds, or you can figure it out, to this totally stop traffic as a result of the pedestrians just coming from this new development that's been proposed. So far be it from them reducing the problem at the intersection, it's going to increase it. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Dennis Beebe.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you for your continued service to our community. I am Dennis Beebe from Solvang. I'd like to remind you the history of Site C. Yes, that is my subject tonight. Now called Wildwood. I won't tell you what some other names of the opponents might use. I'd like to just focus on one of the reports that is part of the application that was submitted on 2 April. It's not something on the website. It's something in a binder at the planning office that the public is welcome to go and leaf through the binder. The one report is called Geotechnical Engineering Report. Geotechnical engineering, pretty technical. I tried to get through it. And this was submitted as part of the, quote, final application on 2 April, but of course it wasn't final. The planning department declared it incomplete, and the developers got till 1 August to submit another final application. But the geotechnical engineering report was part of the first final application. And I want to quote from the report. This is from an engineering firm hired by the developer. And I quote, "The site is suitable for construction." But there's more. They also listed their primary concerns about this particular site, and they listed them: strong seismic shaking, differential settlement, soil expansion potential, high soil moisture content, erosion potential, liquefaction, and seismically induced settlement. You know, they weren't the technical terms that your constituents have used in the past, but you've heard about these concerns before, more based upon experience of living on that hill than any engineering analysis. So the engineering contractor said not to worry, in spite of these concerns, if the developer hires him to manage and oversee the construction project, all the concerns will be resolved. My point is that an engineering firm has cited the same things as your constituents have previously cited, so maybe they're not hand-waving after all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Madam, I'm having a difficult time reading your writing, so I think it's Karen. Is that right? And would you please come up and tell us your name on the microphone for the record?
Karen Kuiper.
Kuiper. Thank you, ma'am.
It's Cooper in English. It's Dutch. I'm here today because my neighbor pointed out what's going to happen, maybe or maybe not, about that construction site there. Now, I live right across the street there. And somebody said that the parking for each unit is 1.5. So if there's a couple that has a child or two, teenager who has a car, where does that child park? At Nielsen's. So if I want to go shopping at Nielsen's places there, so I have to fight people from the construction area there. And then I think also that the parking will, the traffic will increase. And then for what? Is it Mr. Newsom's idea to have mandatory housing? That's probably what it is. So he puts like a Santa Claus, a little tree everywhere. So, and I think it's terrible, really terrible. If you go to Santa Barbara now, which I go because of my doctors and all that sort of thing, it's so, the traffic is so terrible, it's just awful. And Solvang is something that has been peaceful. There isn't a lot of immigration and stuff like that. So all of this is coming in. And Newsom, he said he is going to go for housing for underprivileged people. Who are they? So I think they should do housing for people that work here so that we don't always lose the pharmacist or God knows who or something. So I think this is just money. Money, money, money. Money talks. So, and I would like to know how much that property costs, probably millions. So somebody who has his little hand in there and has the permission to build there is going to be one of California's billionaires. So, and I think it's terrible and just not sustainable. So that's what I think. I'm against it.
Thank you for your comments. That's all the slips I have. Do we have anybody else in the audience that wants to speak at this time? We don't have anybody on Zoom, it doesn't appear. so we'll bring it back to the council. Okay, city manager's report, please.
Yes, I have a few things tonight. First of all, I want to share, I received an email last week. Apparently, the county has changed its solid waste vendor, and some of the individuals that are technically Solvang mailing addresses but not in the city limits received notices that the county's waste hauler is being changed. I want to clarify that does not affect people that are in the city limits of Solvang proper. Our contract with Waste Management continues through 2028. Don't know what will happen in the future, but it's not changing right now. Also wanted to point out there has been some prior discussions to council about modifying the tennis courts to make pickleball available. We are currently scheduled to have that one tennis court transition into 4 pickleball courts, and that contractor is supposed to be on site on July 29th. Want to remind our community that the Pride Festival is on the 22nd. That's a Saturday, not this week, but next week. So downtown will be closed, or at least the highway will be closed. Oh, no, that's not on the highway, I don't believe. But there would be a parade here in town for that. Sorry, my mistake. Badawi and Associates, it will be doing our audit one additional year. We did solicit proposals. We only received one, and it didn't meet our standards, so we're going to try again. And in the meantime, we're going to do that. I'll use them again. Planning department and our marketing and events coordinator. So Raphael and Candace are working together to help work with our business community. We're calling it Business Talks. It will be on a quarterly basis. And the first one will be on June 27th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. here in council chambers. It is intended to be kind of a Q&A session with business owners. Obviously, the public is welcome. They will have a variety of topics, some of which will have to do with some of the ordinances that need to be updated, help it be more consistent and enforceable. Today, we were advised by PG&E at the intersection of Viborg and Alamo Pintado, I believe, near Rebald Drive. There was a power outage in the Creekside neighborhood that affected several homes. And unfortunately, the conduit is not large enough for them to be able to do the necessary work, so they will be excavating, trenching all along through there. The power's on via generators, but this week will go on for about another week. Roger wrote that generators have been mobilized in order to keep all residents in power while work is ongoing. They will trench along Colding Avenue near Viborg and progress to Rebuild Drive and then east along Rebuild to perform the replacement. This is an emergency repair, will be done during daylight hours and ongoing all week and into the next weekend. PG&E crews anticipate primary installation to be completed by next Monday. Repaving of the roadway will occur shortly thereafter. Full access to the hospital on Viborg will be maintained at all times.
That's Creekside that's been affected?
Creekside, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
And then quickly, a couple of things that are on the advanced calendar I wanted to point out.
Yeah.
Tonight, we're going to have the preliminary budget discussion. Next meeting on the 24th will be the final budget adoption. There will be several contract amendment or changes that'll be on there. The next meeting after that, July 8th, will be the 3CE presentation, and the general plan will come for it to be adopted, be discussed then, the resolution, and actually adopted on the 22nd. Alamo Pintado Bridge project, that's the one just east of the Alamo Pintado Bridge on the highway. We'll have a presentation on the 12th of August, and Cal City's representative Dave Molinax will be here on the 22nd, or 23rd rather, of September. And you may notice on the advanced calendar that we've broken out the council registered agenda items separately, and we'll be working toward bringing those items forward forward to council very soon. And that's all I have for now.
Any questions for the,
I have one, Mr. Manager. What was it, breaking out what separately on the agenda items?
On the agenda, the council requested agenda items. I mean, last week there was discussion about a fire abatement and brush removal program, trying to bring something back and get some direction for council. Special event weekend impact on businesses was discussed at a recent council meeting. Sign ordinance review was prior, and on-street parking restriction policy direction. So we have several areas of town that have red curbs and other areas that are requesting them or otherwise time limited. So we're going to come back in the next few months to have a conversation about what the council policy should be on that.
Okay, thank you.
any other comments, questions? Okay, in that case, let's move on to council comments and requests, and the Section 84-308 report out. Anybody have any comments?
On the report out, I
What
just
have you been
want
doing? Yeah.
a lot. I just want to make sure that I reported out. I attended the Measure U committee meeting, which was, I believe, June 4th. Oh, you're right. Thank you, Wendy, for the correction. I shouldn't have even tried to say a date, May 28th.
I'm glad to hear about I'm sorry, how would you define it as? The business talks?
Yeah.
That sounds like it should be really good. And that's June 27th, you said? At what time and where?
5:30 to 7
5:30 to 7, where?
here, council chambers.
Okay. Because I've, honestly, in as much as I'm in the downtown area, there's been a lot of communication and things of that nature as to regards to code enforcement and whiplash that I'm hearing about that I'd like to get straightened out at that meeting. And then, and also to include grandfather scenarios, within the city, and should there not be sunset durations on those grandfather items, just to keep a level playing field throughout for all businesses. As we change, we need the community to be a part of that, not just need to see what those are and determine if that is indeed the case. And then the rest of my comments dealt with the consent items, so I'll stand down.
Go from there.
Actually, I have just an observation, and I'm not asking for any action to be taken, but at about a little 10:30, I drove from the Alisal Glen, from my house, drove my son to Buellton, and from the Alisal Glen to right in front of the subway, to right down where my office looks out on 246, down by Skip Mesa, to Buellton, to the Marriott. I counted 12 homeless people. God bless them, and there was even a camp on McMurray Road, right behind that, by where the Habit building is. So 3 vehicles parked with their doors open and a barbecue going, and people painting paintings in their car. And folks, it's here. We've seen it in other cities. It's been a national problem. It's definitely in Solvang, and I don't have an answer other than to make people aware of it. I don't know what the status of the Supreme Court decision and the Boise issue. Can you address that? Randy?
Actually, that might be better for Chelsea since it's a legal issue.
Yeah, let me. The Supreme Court, I do not believe, has issued their order yet. I think it's coming out this week, but I have not seen that it's come out yet.
Okay. And if we don't have a shelter for them, we cannot tell them they can't camp on the streets.
Right. That's there's more nuance than that, but yes.
Welcome to California. That's all I have.
Okay, a couple comments real quick. Had the opportunity to go to an enrobing ceremony to the Superior Court of California. It was a dual swearing-in ceremony for Superior Court judges was held over at Veterans Hall in the main area. It was interesting to see 20 people in black robes up on the front stage, and who knew that judges could tell jokes? It was really good. If any of you care about this listing of all these judges that were there, it was interesting that in spite of the fact that I know quite a few people in town, I didn't know one person from Solvang there. Not that I saw anyway. They did introduce me, which I thought was very nice. Also, a couple of us had gone to a candidate forum and listening to what some of the ideas are for the candidates, for those of us that are going to be running again in November. Okay, other than that, what do we have next? Okay, so let's go to the consent items, please. Madam Clerk, if you'd read that into the record.
Consent is for routine administrative city matters and is approved with one motion. These items are discussed only on request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak during the public communications portion of this agenda.
I don't think we have any comments or public comment for this, do we? No, okay. At this point in time, then, do we have,
Dave has some issues.
Go ahead, Smith.
please, go ahead.
Basically, I'd like to pull a couple of these extensions. Why these are not being put out again for RFPs is beyond me. Some of these contracts are well over, or coming up to 10 years in time. And I don't want it to be a good old boys network that just keeps rolling down the hill without opportunities for either better cost or additional vendor list. So I'm having some heartburn over the continued extension of contracts.
Which ones do you want to pull?
I'd like to pull 6F and 6G.
Okay. Do I have any objection to that?
Staff can give us direction on maybe some of the history behind these?
And
Well, we need to pull those out first and talk about the remainder of the consent
Gotcha.
first, don't we?
Yes,
You're right,
it
you're
would
right.
be
Thank you.
a motion for the ones that you'd like to
Yeah.
pull with a second and a vote, and then you can take the vote on the remainder consent calendar, and then we can go through the pulled items one by one.
Right.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items, consent agenda minus F and G as written.
and J, I'm sorry.
Oh, and J?
Yes.
I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda, subtracting F, G, and J.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes?
Councilmember Claudia Rona?
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Rona?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Yes.
Mayor Infante?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, and then I need a motion, please, to accept the rest of the consent items as they stand. Oh, no, that's what we just did,
That's what we
sorry.
just did.
We need to talk about each one of these separately and then have a motion on each one separately. My apologies.
Yes.
Okay, so shall we discuss, starting with F? What did you want to bring up, Mr. Brown?
Let me get it in here on my agenda, sorry. E, G. Good thing they're alphabetical.
The numbers kind of jumped out at you, huh?
Yeah, they did. Well, when I read them, they were,
I could read it for you, sir.
well, the example was 6G, excuse me.
F is the Moore and Associates.
For transit marketing.
Transit.
Yeah, the issue is that they've been transient folks for a long, long time, but we're rolling over these contracts. This one originally started in 2014. That's 10 years ago. And all we're doing is just revolving it and adding on to the original contract. I'd like to see a RFP opportunities for these contracts that go out. Maybe they're still the best, but I'd like to have that renewal aspect as opposed to just rolling them over and hitting. So, so that'd be for the Moore contract.
Well, let's have the city manager tell us a little bit about what's going on, please.
Thank you. I don't know the specifics about other competing interests for this particular service, but I committed to the council last year when we were going through some of this that we would begin the process. This was one we didn't get to. Roger is here. He can speak to the availability of other competing interests, but I understand and agree that we should try to do that. Unfortunately, due to bandwidth issues and other priorities, some of these we're not been able to look at, but I do agree that it is something going forward we should be able to do. Roger, you want to address maybe why? Is there somebody else?
Well, I have a question, Randy, before we take that time. This is a contract extension and not a rate or a contract value increase, is it?
That's correct. We're not increasing the value at all. It's just that it's standard year-to-year costs in order to provide the transit management and marketing services that are kind of requirement of us being the lead agency for St. Inez Valley Transit.
Is it possible you could explain to the residents what we get for that almost $1 million?
For almost $1 million, that's the past 10 years.
Well, the $912,000, I think it was. What was it?
Over the last 10 years.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
It's not.
What it entails. What
Yeah,
are we getting for
what
it?
that entails is they provide basically the transit management services. All of the they meet monthly with our transit operator. They go over transit issues and other things. They coordinate with a lot of the federal and state agencies that deal with the transit funding. They help me writing the staff reports and figuring out how much to ask for not only the grants but also the funding service, the annual funding that we receive from Caltrans and from SBCAG.
Mm-hmm.
So they coordinate all that. It's it's a very niche market that you can't just go out and hire some engineering firm or something like that. It's very detailed, and it's not something that anybody can do. They know their stuff and they're very good at it. Are there other agencies out there that can do this sort of thing? I'm sure there are. I do know that Moore & Associates works with the other local transit agencies substantially. While other transit agencies may have more staff. Again, I get, maybe 5 to 10% of my time I get to come up for air and take a look at it. They're the ones that are managing it on the day-to-day for us. I do know that they work with the Santa Maria Area Transit, as well as, I believe they do some work with Lompoc as well.
Roger, do you remember if they have increased their costs? It's about $45,000 extension for a full year. That's what it says. Have they increased their costs to us in the last 10 years?
It might have been increased over the last 10 years. I couldn't speak to that, but
Last how many years?
Since I've been here, they have not increased their costs. It's been pretty straightforward. They have done a few other specific some reports and projects that were in addition to their work, which was what's called the short range transit plan, or the transit management plan, and also most recently the ADA update. That's a 5-year requirement that we need to do. So they were on top of that, and they got that taken care of.
Okay.
Any other questions
Not on that
on this one?
No.
Do we need to
Do we have
approve
to-
these one at a time then, Mrs. Attorney?
You can do a motion on all three if it's all going
Once we've
to
gone
be
through
the
all of them.
same. Yeah, I think
Thank
that's
you.
fine.
G?
Yeah, with item G, again, here's a contract that started in excuse me, let me find it, 2018, for street sweeping services, and the company's from Arroyo Grande. There may have not have been closer competitors in 2018, I don't know, but I'm trying to keep things as local as possible. and keep these contracts current with the liabilities and the legal aspects associated with it. They should be updated and renewed either by RFP or by a new contract, as opposed to these extensions that we just keep adding and adding and adding. And it gets to be some serious money. So that's another one that I thought should be an RFP type of contract. I'm not saying that we don't have, I don't have the solution for you. I'm just saying it's given me some heartburn as it relates to our vendors and the policies of just rubber stamping these contracts annually.
Yeah, it's completely understood. And again, this is one where we're staring down the barrel of the contract expiring, and we haven't gone out for RFP yet. So it's either we're not going to do that service or we extend it. At the next council agenda, we got an email today. There are quite a few that are coming in the next agenda. So we'll probably be having the same conversation because again, it's just a matter of staff bandwidth. We just, an RFP takes 2 to 3 months. It's a 2 to 3 month process, and it takes it takes some authoring by staff to actually put it out, and then scoring by staff and everything else, and then negotiating with the contract. So the whole process takes 4 to 5 months, on top of everything else that we're doing. So it's not easy, and it does take some time. Most recently, the custodial contract was one that we tackled pretty recently, and that was several months in the making is what it took. So we're getting to them.
Mr. City Manager.
Thanks. So I also wanted to add, if you look at the annual amount, it's not that much. And under previous administration, it was just approved by the city manager because it's within the control or the authorization amount of the city manager on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm.
But in my attempt to bring full transparency to the council as well as the community, that's why you're seeing these. Again, historically, you haven't. And I did make the commitment last year when we went through this with several of these. I don't know that they all came, but some of them did. And that we would do that. But unfortunately, due to bandwidth issues, other competing priorities, we haven't had the time to get them all done, but we will. In the preliminary budget, there is a new position. We'll talk more about that later to provide administrative assistance to the planning and public works departments. And that is one of the tasks that either that position or that will free up some time so the department head that will have time to address more of these types of things.
Thank you.
Fine.
Next one, last
Yeah,
one.
on the last one, item 6J with Canon, I'm seeing a conflict of interest on this contract because our contractor for utilities, for water utilities, is the same organization. So for the same organization to tell me they're putting in the meters or have another solution for us, I just want to make sure that there are no conflicts of interest with the, I'm sure the people are above reproach, but again, an RFP might solve that issue.
Yeah, I was more involved in this one than Roger was, and Canon is our on-call engineering firm. That was I assume it was an RFP process to retain them. This is another situation where in the past it may not have been raised to the council's attention, but because the cumulative value exceeded $100,000 of the on-call services that they provided, this addition is for a specific project where they're going to do design and construction management of meter replacement program to do more of the remote reading. The estimate here is for $79,000, I believe, and some change, 76 and change. The entire project will be in the CIP next year when that comes forward in August, I believe, for approximately $400,000 for the actual work. This is just for design and construction management. I agree that this is another one we should probably go out for, and hopefully when we do recruit or are successful in recruiting utility director, we'll have somebody with some level of engineering background so that we don't need as much consulting help. So in my weekly email to y'all, I have the link to that I'll send out on Friday. I'll have the link to the recruitment brochure so you can see what the asks are, whether we get a perfect unicorn. It's going to be hard to find, but hopefully you don't get anything you don't ask for, so we're working toward that, but I hear you loud and clear.
Can I add to that? It's looking to me like Councilmember Brown's looking for maybe just a review of the process of renewing contracts, et cetera, as a separate issue, not micromanaging each one. But maybe we'll look into something like that if you want to move forward with that.
Yeah, no,
Instead of, I would vote no, I can say that. I wouldn't want to do RFPs on every single renewal of contract. But maybe how we review it would be beneficial.
I feel like we should empower the staff to determine when we should RFP if they see scope change or significant price change. When we're looking at business as usual extensions, it doesn't feel like we need to balance the burden on the staff versus, just operational business as usual running the city. And Randy's it's been the practice that we've seen these extensions all year, and it feels like it adds up. But we're actually we're dissecting the operational budget every time we see this, and it doesn't mean that costs aren't necessarily increasing.
But I appreciate the other discussion, and unless there's anything else, I'll move to approve these 3 items.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. Okay. So we don't have anything on the public hearing, so we're on to the discussion items. 8A, if you would introduce that, please, Madam Clerk.
Discussion and possible action to approve and adopt joint powers agreement for Santa Ynez Valley Basin Eastern Management Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency.
Staff report.
Good evening, Council. Yes, I will give the staff report for this. So, as you know, over the past 2 years, staff has been negotiating the JPA for the Eastern Management District with Santa Ynez River Water Conservation District, Improvement District 1, and the Santa Ynez River Water Conservation District, the Santa Barbara County Water Agency, and the Santa Barbara County Water Agency. It's been a long road, but you now have before you a final agreement that is for your approval. The 4 agencies finally reached tentative agreement on several issues, but the main one, some key provisions would be that each member would contribute $50,000 in startup costs, but that does not include the ag rep, because the ag rep would not be a member. They just have a seat on the board. And so the other part that's key to point out is this does have an ag representative as a non-member director that's appointed by a unanimous vote of the member directors. I think the language also, kind of allows business to continue as usual, even if in the interim between when an ag director is appointed. Previous drafts, I think the voting was set up that it was kind of things were going to be stopped and stalled if the ag director wasn't appointed. So that's been remedied. So those are some of the key last, final changes. But happy to take any questions. And with the acknowledgement that Mr. Fleischman has been in the negotiations and not me. But I'm happy to, answer questions about the agreement.
Well, we have our GSA rep right here.
Yes, and Councilmember Arona, you've been in the calls, so please.
Did just want to first say thank you to the staff, Randy, and the legal team who worked a long time to get us in a position, if you would like, I can make just a few additional comments on what's in the agreement. And after all that effort, I think a couple really positive things have come out of the agreement. We did settle on and get agreement. It was a final sticking point and a tough one to overcome, that all 4 agency participants will contribute to the initial operational funding to a $50,000 startup cost. And I did notice in the budget, because it's also on the agenda and we spent a lot of time reviewing it, we did earmark about $250,000 for additional potential operational expenses. So if you caught that, all of that is reimbursable. It's startup cost, which we've already been granted all the money to fund that, but we have to show the expenditures before we can receive the reimbursement. So the other positive things is we have improved our voting status in the JPA, and Solvang now has 1 equal vote. And if you were following all those details, we did not have that status at all. So we get to still contribute and participate as an equal partner in, sustaining the groundwater and our well water for the city of Solvang and for our residents. So that's very positive. We did take a leadership position by putting the ag seat into the JPA. That was probably 80% of the effort to get us to some terms that really, I think, are require a supermajority vote, but have ag representation. This is the voice of the property owners and the business owners that participate or that rely on the groundwater to sustain their properties or their ranches or the primarily vineyards, and to have them participate and be active stakeholders in the decision on how to conserve, protect, and pump, and meter, and also establish rates is I think we found a way to make sure that the value of that balanced with the legal provisions.
Let me add one thing to that, too. The $250K is refundable, but it's my understanding that the chances of us getting it back in less than 2 years are pretty slim. So that's going to eat into our budget for a couple of years. We're going to be talking about budgets here in a little bit, but that's a chunk.
So the way it's written, the JPA is written, is that there's a commitment to get reimbursed by June of 2026. So it's 2 years. If it is not, so the way it's written is it will be interest-free up to that point. After that, so to incentivize them to pay it back, then we would start incurring, or they would start incurring interest charges.
We start collecting interest on it?
Unless the board, as it's comprised, and whoever's on the board at that time, votes to continue to waive it. But the idea was to try and incentivize them to pay it back by June of 26.
So 2 points. Randy's absolutely right, but 2 additional points. The $250,000 is kind of the cap, and we could get reimbursed along the way. So there are streams of how we could spend the money on a rate study or metering and pumping, but hopefully also along the way, the agency can become self-fundable. So we will only really, in theory, we only need the money. In theory, we need the money for, a temporary window of time. And we are sharing. That is our portion of the contribution.
Yeah, but it's still $250K for us.
Yes.
Everybody else has to come up with the same. Okay. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Quick comment on item 7.2 in the contract on page 158. Upon request of the board, the San Ynez Water Group, working in conjunction with other, should we say, do we need to specify them, or can we specify or similar organization? Why are they put forth as a named entity?
It's a fair question. It was probably the most unusual part of the agreement. And the formation of the San Ynez Water Group, the San Ynez Water Group in the contract is putting forward and nominating applicants for the approval of the board for the naming of the ag seat representative. So that's the process that's being defined in the contract or in the agreement. And the San Ynez Water Group is the entity, the body that will put forward those applicants. Why are they important is because they have spent the last year or two, don't hold me to that window, but I would say it's probably close to 2 years, creating a not-for-profit entity that has representation for all of their property owners and vineyard owners, business owners, so anyone who has a stake of interest in the EMA management boundary is being represented by the San Ynez Water Group.
And the agricultural group within in the area.
Yes.
And they provided a list of hundreds of vineyards and farms and whatnot that are part of who they would be electing from.
I would say one more thing, Dave, just if I may. I see it as the equivalent of something like a Cattlemen's Association or the Farm Workers of America Association, but they have created it specifically formed of just the members in that water group or in that boundary of the water agency.
And if I can add, just a little bit farther down, there's a kind of an out that if that San Ynez Water Group is unwilling or unable to select a qualified nominee, then the board may request that another agricultural association fill that role. So if for some reason they disband or they're not able to do it.
Chelsea, one more thing, and it has to be a unanimous vote.
It's a unanimous vote to accept whoever they bring up.
Yes.
They're very fair questions, Dave.
Yeah, I'd say we've been working on this for a long time. Okay, any other questions? Then we'll bring it out for public comment. I don't have any speaker slips. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to talk about Groundwater Sustainability Agency for the Eastern Management Area Joint Powers Authority? It's an acronym. You like the way I remembered all that? That's good. Nobody on Zoom? Okay, let's bring it back to the council. We need a motion to approve that,
I would say a motion to approve and adopt.
approve and adopt the JPA.
I move to approve and adopt the JPA agreement and contract.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Yes, sir.
So to point out, we are the first of the 4 agencies to approve this document. It still needs to be approved by the other 3 members of the board.
Right.
They are scheduled on the various agendas upcoming very soon. So our part of it's done at this point. My understanding and talking with the staff at the other agencies, it will be, should go through fine, but Murphy's Law. I just want to throw the caveat out there that we're not quite finished, but hopefully we are.
Murphy's
May
Law.
I ask, Mr. City Manager, what's the timeline on something like that with all those different agencies?
The 3, the Buellton, Buellton,
ID1.
ID1 and the Conservation District boards need to approve it at their next meetings. Once that's done, they will agendize it at the county level, and then the county water agency will then approve it, and then that's when it becomes
A couple of months.
official.
So it's yeah.
So by July, I believe.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just want to thank Councilwoman, and Elizabeth Arona for her hard and diligent work on that contract.
Well, yes.
The lawyers did.
It's exciting stuff.
It's been a long time. So thank you also. 8B, if you would introduce that for us, Ms. Clerk.
Discussion and possible action regarding adopting General Municipal November 5th, 2024 election resolutions number 241256, 241257, 241258, 24-1259, and 24-1260 regarding the holding of the general municipal election for Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, for calling the, again, the election of certain officers in consideration of a ballot measure as required by the provisions of the laws of the state of California relating to charter cities, to consolidate with the, or requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of Santa Barbara to consolidate the general municipal election, requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of Santa Barbara to render specified services to the city, and regulations for candidates for elective office pertaining to candidate statements and providing for a procedure for determining a tie by lot, determining by lot a tie among candidates at the November 5th, 2024 election.
Did you get all of that? There's a whole lot of this.
We do this every 4 years, 2 years.
Yeah.
This is all procedural.
It is to a degree, but I'm going to ask our
big
attorney to introduce this to us because we have a couple of exceptions on how we have to vote for this.
Yes, so just on procedure for this one, you can do all of those resolutions in one motion. And just like Councilmember Clark said, it is quite procedural. The resolutions lay out all the different elements that we need to adopt to get our local general election going for our own candidates. And as the resolutions say, it's consolidated with the general election that's happening statewide.
So what
Just leave it at that.
What happens if a council says no?
No, we're not having an election.
I don't recommend
This is a coup.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Then we haven't made the actions to have our local election.
Right, I was
It'd
going to
be
say,
problematic.
a lot less
it's
expensive to
funny.
consolidate with the county and the state election than it is to go on our own, because we're required to have elections.
The way things are
So
going
then it
everywhere.
would be much more expensive and complicated, and Anna Marie will pull what's left of her hair out.
Whoa.
Oh,
That'll cost you 2 pounds of these
okay.
candies.
Questions of staff report, anybody? Okay, I have no speaker slips from the audience. Do I have anybody in the audience that wants to talk about whether we should agree with the Santa Barbara to put our votes on the voting ballot, or basically what it comes down to, right? Nobody? Okay.
I'll
Can I
make
have a motion?
to adopt resolutions 24-1256, 24-1257, 24-56, 24-57, 24-58, 24-59, and 24-60 as written.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
I was going to do the no, but that would have been silly.
Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, if you'd introduce us to item 6C.
Discussion and possible action to receive TOT tax measure poll results for the November 5th, 2024 general municipal election and potentially approving and submitting an ordinance regarding the TOT tax measure for voter consideration at the November 5th, 2024 election. By 4/5 vote, adopt resolution number 24-1261, approving submission of an ordinance continuing and modifying an existent transient occupancy hotel tax to the voters at the general municipal election to be held on November 5th, 2024, and directing the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis thereof. Adopt resolution number 24-1262, setting priorities for filing written arguments regarding a city ballot measure. Adopt resolution number 24-1263, providing for the filing of rebuttal arguments for a city measure submitted at the November 5th, 2024 general municipal election.
Thank you. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So back in April of this year, the City Council set goals for the next 2 years of financial planning. And some of those goals included improving police response and overall public safety and service, assessing opportunities in financing to improve traffic, pedestrian and bicycle circulation, and supporting local organizations to meet community needs, assessing library needs, and developing long-term infrastructure maintenance and funding plans, among other things. So in furtherance of trying to help the city meet those goals, staff evaluated whether a revenue measure would be important to the city of Solvang's residents. And the city, put out for resident feedback on that and launched a community outreach effort through scientific survey methods to determine whether that would be, a good thing to pursue. And after we got the survey results through our consultant, we decided that it was a good idea to move forward with the TOT ballot measure. And so that's why this is before you today. As part of, we have to, under the relevant authorities, you have to, general taxes have to be proposed by resolution, and you have to approve the first resolution to approve the ordinance. That has to be by 2/3 vote, which equals 4/5 of you. So 4 out of 5 of you have to vote yes on that. That's a little higher threshold than a regular majority vote. And this also has to be consolidated with the statewide election under the Constitution and the Government Code. So that's also why it's coming now, because we need to consolidate it with the upcoming election since it's a general tax. So any questions? I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions?
If a council member is not here, how do you can't do a 3/4, so what do you do?
So if one of you were not here, it would have to be 4 of you. All 4 of you would have to vote yes
Okay,
on that
thank you. I was just
resolution.
curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sidebar.
sometimes the voting requirements.
Because he was late.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
Sometimes voting requirements are of those present and voting, but this one is of the body, so it wouldn't matter. If we only had 3 people here, we wouldn't be able to adopt that resolution.
And I'm just curious why some things are 4/5, and I've seen it before over and over, and I was just curious why some are, don't answer now.
Yeah.
I'm just curious why some are like that and some aren't.
This one in particular is set by, I think, Proposition 62. They just put that voting requirement in there, so we have to follow it.
It's special. Yes, sir.
Chelsea, I had a question. What is the TOT rates for Buellton and the unincorporated areas of our community?
Yeah.
They're both 12%.
Yeah.
And they are both also considering a similar measure.
Not only considering it, it'll be presented here shortly.
Well,
There-
Buellton's already approved it to be on the ballot.
Yeah.
And the county is presenting it at an upcoming Board of Supervisors meeting.
Yeah, and I guess I should clarify, what you all are doing right now is adopting a resolution to approve an ordinance that will then go to the voters on the November 5th election. The voters have to approve a general tax increase. So this action is just to do all the procedural things to let that happen.
Question, if the voters approve this, when does it actually take effect and we start getting money?
It would be effective, hold on, it says it in the, ordinance. It's after the adoption, after the election. The ordinance shall become effective 10 days after the city council accepts certification of the election results. So once we have the election,
Basically December.
yeah, so it would be later.
Just in time for Jewel Fest.
For what?
Just in time for Jewel Fest.
And then I'm sure there's some, operational things we'd have to, Wendy might be able to speak to that of, getting it up and running to track that and charge it, but.
And we have received support from local businessmen about this too, so this is.
And we got a letter from Visit SYB, which I think took the position that they were not going to be in support unless all the surrounding cities were, contemplating a similar voting or a similar effort to put it on the ballot.
Right.
So we wouldn't market price ourselves out of competitiveness.
Yes, sir.
I was going to say, I did a little research. The last time the city increased the TOT was in 2015, so it's been almost 10 years.
What was the rate at that time?
I don't know. I didn't look at what the increase was. I just saw that the last time it was increased in 2015.
I think it was 10%.
So it went up 2 points then. Okay.
So I also looked other cities. City of San Francisco has been at 14 since 1996. City of LA has been at 14 since 1993. And oh, by the way, they also have another 2.3% for Deca T-bid kind of a thing. Santa Barbara's at 12, Long Beach is at 13. So it's 14 is not unheard of.
Yeah, Huntington Beach is going for 15 right now, I think.
Well, I think the cap is 14, isn't it?
No, I don't think there is.
There's no cap.
I don't think.
Okay. I find it, I'm sorry, I had to laugh, but Oakland is at 14%, but nobody stayed in a hotel in Oakland in 3 years.
Okay.
Ay, ay, ay.
Okay, so, all right, we any other questions on the staff report for item I1? I. And then we'll take it, do we have any public comment for this one? No?
Need to take public comment.
Anybody in the audience wish to say anything about TOT increase? No? And nobody's on Zoom that wants to, nobody's on Zoom. Okay, we'll bring it back. At this point in time, we need a motion that has to be passed by a 4 out of the 5 of us.
Yes, so
to approve, this is 24-12-61.
Yeah, the first resolution needs to be approved independently. So one motion to adopt Resolution 24-12-61, and then once we get through that resolution, we can do one resolution for the other remaining two resolutions together.
Okay.
Excuse me, one motion for the remaining two.
May I add one last council comment? I have heard several merchants and hotel owners are adamant against this, and I've always said that I would prefer the voters have the decision instead of us. And that's the only reason I will vote for this, because I want the voters to decide, but there is a lot of opposition to this in the Valley.
Any other
Yeah, I'll make
comments?
one more comment. I think we're sensitive to making sure we're not making ourselves uncompetitive, but I think we also saw the benefit, we're realizing the benefit of the Measure U 1% tax increase, 1%, and I really I haven't heard too much reaction post Measure U and the actual sales tax increase, and it was voted on, but we are in with a single percentage rate increase, we're looking at $3.7 million in additional funding over the last 2 years. So I think
And paid by the tourists.
exactly, and paid by the tourists and hopefully benefiting the residents. So I think we let the voters decide.
Yeah, real quick. I can model this out and explain economically that every time that one of our hotels increases the rate of the room, we benefit from that, and it goes up. So we're at par with inflation in that regard. So, and I don't want to kill the golden goose either, okay? And keep this ratcheting up. So I'm going to tell you that I'm okay, because we're going to give it to the public to make their decision, but probably I'll be right in the rebuttal for it. So. With Mr. Clark.
May I add one more thing, too? How many hotels are currently in planning right now, and how many beds?
I don't know the exact answer. They're
At least 150, 200?
something close to that, yes.
Okay. So you get those hotels, and I know that those hotels that are in the works are specialty, they're not motels. They're specialty high-end hotels. I would suggest, more than increasing the TOT, speed up the planning process, get these hotels opened, high dollar, which would increase more than this tax would. So I would like to get off, or get moving. These have been in the works for what, 2+ years, for most of them? And I would like to see those get moved along before I would like to see taxes increased. That's my comment.
Okay, so we've been through lack of public comment, there's no interest in that. Can I get a motion to approve this, please?
Chelsea, can you just give us that guidance one more time? Because we're supposed to separate these out.
This is just I.
Yeah, so you
Just
just need
aye.
to make a motion to adopt Resolution 24-12-61.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 24-12-61.
Second? I'll second it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Clark.
No.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay, so now we need to talk about the following two resolutions, 24-1262 and 1263, setting the priorities for filing written arguments regarding a city ballot measure and providing for filing rebuttal arguments for a city measure submitted at November 5th general municipal election. How'd I do, Attorney?
Great. And again, these are just procedural things that we need to do as part of this
Part of the
TOT measure. So you can, unless there's further discussion or questions, you can just make a motion to adopt both of those resolutions.
I'll move we adopt
the
both.
argument, but not the rebuttal?
No, I do not recommend that.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we adopt both Resolution 24-1262 and 24-1263. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Wow. Okay. Let's go on to, that was 8C, right? Yeah.
Yes.
In spite of the fact that it says 6C on my notes. 8D, if you'd introduce that to us, please, Madam Clerk.
Certainly, it's 8D, discussion and possible action to approve Measure U committee recommendations for Measure U expenditures and authorize creation of a strategic plan for the Measure U committee.
Staff report?
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members and members of the public. Tonight, before you, we have to approve the Measure U committee recommendations. Staff met with the Measure U committee several times. The first time we talked about the expenditures that are listed in the staff report. I won't go over those. And then with the budget deficit, we met again with them to discuss the sheriff's funding the sheriff's contract out of the Measure U committee or out of the Measure U funds. And the Measure U committee recommended that. And so the total expenses out of the Measure U funds will be $3.2 million through 24-25. That will leave an estimated amount of $1,146,263 in the fund balance. And with that, the Measure U committee would also like to form a committee to do a strategic plan to determine where future funds will be spent. One of the things we did remove from the Measure U funding was the skating rink, because logistically it was not going to be feasible to put all together for this Yule Fest due to where would it go, the weather, because if it is over 80 degrees at Christmas time, it will melt. And because of the substantial cost, over $300,000, we determined that it would be better to do more research and get all our ducks in a row before we do that. So it is in the budget for 25-26. So with that, I'll pass it back to council members for questions.
Questions?
Yeah, Wendy, I had a question. What is they're asking for a strategic plan, and are they?
They want to
just want to add out committee or
they
something?
want to have a strategic plan on how we will use the funds in the future that best go with I guess the requirements when it went to the vote of the people. And that's pothole and street repair, flammable bus removal, 911 emergency response, neighborhood police patrols, rec programs, and general government use.
Okay.
So they just want to make sure that
That's within the preview of that committee, right?
Pardon?
It's in the, within
Purview.
the.
Yes.
Purview of, okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, some of the comments, one of the ideas, there was a concern, I guess, expressed that roughly almost an entire year's worth of Measure U funds were being spent on the sheriff contract. So they wanted to have a conversation and identify areas to kind of more evenly distribute or allocate those funds. To try and come up with some ideas that would be representative of the community's wishes that, again, were expressed in the ballot measure. So obviously, 911 services sheriff contract is certainly within the proper use of the funds. But there just was a desire to have a little better, more fair, I guess, or equitable distribution of the funds as opposed to leaning so heavily on public safety. So thus, they talked about creating a strategic plan that the committee would, recommend that would ultimately come to council and say, okay, this is a good idea. And then we would, moving forward, we could identify maybe more of the things that the general fund is paying for. I mean, one of the things that popped into my head was potentially libraries. We pay an annual amount. I believe it's about $85,000 to.
No, it's 190.
Okay, so I missed about 100,000. Sorry. But the idea is there's a substantial amount of money we pay to support the library. Well, could that be one of the ideas that they adopt in their strategic plan? I don't know.
Sure.
But that's one of the ideas, and then that would free up more true general fund dollars for the distribution of the funds and make the budgeting process a lot easier going forward.
Questions, anybody?
I think the point has to be made that the development of the idea of a strategic plan, because I listened to both Measure U meetings, was in reaction to, they're being asked very early on to absorb $2.5 million of cost, general fund costs, it is general fund cost, that they didn't really get to decide on, and that was $2 million in the sheriff contract across the 2 years, and $450,000 for the senior center capital development program. It's not that those were bad decisions, it's just that the Measure U committee was built to, it's kind of one of those rare examples where the public gets to, or representatives from the public get to, as close as possible, decide how their tax dollars are spent. And, we took 70% of that out of their hands by making those decisions. And I hope that the rest of the budget that we're going to look at next has the same amount of, what I saw was they were pretty diligent in making sure that the way they recommended this money is spent was in alignment with the intent and the spirit of what was represented in the election. So I hope that we can continue to let them give us that feedback and not spend all their money for them.
Comments, questions? I have one. I'm confused, Wendy. If I go to page 240, this shows the Measure U budget totals. For 2025, it shows a negative $920,000.
That is how much we will take out of the fund balance for the 24-25 expenses. So the fund balance will be reduced by the 920 once we receive all the revenue.
But the fund balance was, what, 1.2?
Well, you also have to include, we started collecting the Measure U money April of 2023. So you have the April, May, and June, and then all of 23-24 plus 24-25 funds.
Which total how much?
It'll be, I do believe, 2, 3, yeah, pretty close to 4.3.
4,400,000.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to lose $1 million. This negative 920,000 then comes against that. I'm lost. I have to admit.
So you have to take all the revenue that we earned
Yeah.
minus all the expenses that we're projecting to do.
Yeah,
And then that will leave the surplus of 1.1 million in the fund balance. But just for 24, 25, we'll reduce the balance of 900 by 920,000.
We're spending more than we're receiving in the single fiscal year, but because we have a substantial fund balance going into the year, we still end up with a positive fund balance.
This is not giving you all the data, Mark. It's just showing you the impact for 25, but not
Specific
showing you
year.
24's balance.
If you go to page 254 of the packet, which is the page right before that, you'll see it begins with the unrestricted balance. Well, actually, at the actual fund balance of 6/30/23, we had $536,262 under Fund 207. Do you see that?
no,
It's
wait a minute, what page are you on, 254?
254. It's this one right
Yeah.
here.
Got it. This is, you know, just to test
hang
your
on.
eyes, folks.
Hang on.
Tests mine.
Did you see that?
Yeah, really.
So if we go, let's see, hold on.
This particular one messes me up a lot when we get to talking about total budget, because there's things in here that say well, we'll talk about that when we get to total
Yeah.
budget. Let's talk about.
But then
measure U.
if you look at the, so I do believe this is 23, 24, we're predicting that we're gonna earn, 2,030,000, and we'll spend 500,000 of that, which is, right, the sheriff's contract. So, so it's like a compounding effect. So with the 536,262 that we earned in 22, 23, plus the revenue for 23, 24, minus the 500,000 of expense for 23, 24, then we're estimating that we'll have $2,066,262 at the end of 23, 24 fund balance, which means the total money in like that bank account. And then for 24, 25, we are estimating that we'll get $1,780,000 in revenue. Do you see that? It's right,
Yeah, I got it.
right here.
It's the 2,700,000 in expenses
very well.
that kind of messing with me.
There. So if you look right here, you guys probably can't see that.
Yeah.
And then you have, right below that, you have expenses of 2.7 million.
Right.
So at the end of 24, 25, if we received every penny, not more, not less, we would have 1,146,000
And change.
left in like the bank account.
So the negative 900,000 is the difference between the revenue and expense in 24, 25, not
Yes.
taking into account the fund balance.
What you've carried over.
The
Yeah.
money we had in the bank to begin the year.
We simplify it because we
'Cause
got
I'm an idiot.
confused on this in our last meeting. So I want to make a statement. We are not in the negative
No,
in the general fund for 23, 24.
no.
We
Well,
are not in the,
not-
sorry, get the
correct.
physical years right.
Yes.
And we are not in the negative for 24, 25, and we are not in the negative for the projection for 25, 26.
The reserves are.
No, none of the reserves
The
are.
reserves have gone down.
No, they have all
Well,
gone
look at
up.
this
Well,
report.
They have all gone up.
Okay, but you have to realize
We're
that
talking budget
the
now, be careful.
okay, so we legally have to approve a budget that's revenue over expense.
Right.
Okay, when the fund balance goes down, it's because we're using the fund balance for capital expenditures, for, road repair or,
We'll talk about that in the next segment. This
Right.
should just be about Measure U, and I don't want to get ahead, and I apologize for
Thank you for
getting it.
saying that.
Yeah, but so we just look at the Measure U fund, can we put punctuation on, we are positive, positive, and positive for last year, this year, projection for
Okay.
24, 25, and for the forward year.
All right, and just so that I have it clear, so the reason why we were talking about the budget and we said we were in the red, and that's why we had to consider our human services grant, reduce, was because we were in the red, because we were not considering this Measure U money?
Correct.
Okay,
Because we wanted to take it to the Measure U committee
right,
for their blessing.
okay.
And the reason we can take it is because it is technically general fund money.
Correct.
So we're not
And-
doing anything, we're doing everything, treating general fund as general fund.
Yes.
So we're okay.
And the reason why it's in a separate fund, so we can be more transparent on where the money is being spent versus putting it in the general fund. It won't get lost because it will have its own separate account numbers, but it's just more obvious for the public.
Like so many taxes in California.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I have just one question on the Measure U. Were there any other recommendations that did not make it into this summary that
No.
were from Measure U?
No.
Okay. The committee.
Pardon?
The committee.
No.
Okay.
And so what are we supposed to do? Accept it?
We're gonna
Approve it?
We're going to go to the
Approve it?
public first.
Approve the recommendation?
Okay. Go ahead.
I don't have any slips for this particular one. Does anybody want to talk about Measure U? No. Wow. Yes, ma'am.
Goodness.
Hi, my name is Alice Ola. Actually, I have a question. In one of the last meetings, you talked about receiving money back from FEMA for the Alisal Bridge. Does that go in this measure?
No.
Or in the budget?
When it comes here, but not in here. This is Measure U. This is that 1% sales tax that was put onto the city
Okay.
costs.
Different line.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll
Okay.
address that in the next item.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll bring it back. At this point in time,
I think we have another speaker.
we did, oh, I'm sorry. Jamie, I didn't see you back there.
Hi, my name is Jamie Baker. I also am a member of the Measure U committee, and I just wanted to address something that Councilwoman Arona said about the ideas that came forth to us to consider and to flesh out. It was not given to us the idea that ideas could come from us to be considered, and I think that is the purpose of one of the main purposes for why we were discussing a strategic plan, is to bring into focus how these ideas, how these concerns do come to the community and to the community. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll bring it back to the council. We need to approve these Measure U recommendations. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Measure U recommendations.
If I can ask before the vote goes through, whether that includes also direction to staff to create a strategic plan for the Measure U committee funds.
Say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to 8E. If you'll introduce that, please.
Discussion and possible action to approve the preliminary budget.
Okay. So, budget. It's a biannually budget, as you well know, 24-25 and 25-26. We will, as part of the biennial process, we will have a mid-cycle budget review where we will review in January the expenses from 24-25 and then moving forward to 25-26. The 10-year capital improvement plan is not included in any of these budget figures because we do have to take the capital improvement plan to the Planning Commission, and that will be in August. And then we will bring that back to council for approval as long as the projects are compliant with the general plan. We originally started out with a $2 million deficit, but with cutting expenses and funding the sheriff's contract with the Measure U and the other items that you approved prior to this, we are actually at a surplus of $683,486. There was a mistake in the staff report on the Measure U on prior pages where it said it was $473,355 surplus. But we did have an error with, because we moved the parks from the Public Works Department, there was a duplicate in park salaries in the Public Works. So we removed those, so that's why there is a difference of $683,486. Overall, with all the funds, we will have a surplus of $2,139,170 if is projected. The general fund total revenue will be $10,932,272. Total expenses is the $10,248,786, where the surplus of the $683,486 comes from. Staff determined not to fund the management analyst position until January of 2025 to reduce the costs, along with a parks part-time employee. We also removed NeoGov software. If tonight you just see a bunch of charts and graphs with figures, on the 24th, we will bring forward a whole entire budget book, and it will have pictures. It'll have more information than what's presented tonight. We have not done that tonight because we are implementing a new budget software. And over the last month, Jason and I have been training and moving forward with putting all this in to the budgeting software, and Jason has been great at putting in all the figures. And then the janitorial contract will remain intact, where the Public Works Department staff will do sidewalk cleaning and sidewalk grinding, which will eliminate the contracts for that grinding and the cleaning. And then Measure A will contribute $120,000 to the general fund for those services, because Measure A, the funds are used for streets. We did reduce the sales tax revenue based on our conversations with our sales tax specialists, and they predicted that the sales tax will drop 3%, so that is included in the figures. Property tax increased 6.2%, and I do have in the packet all the charts. We can look at a specific chart if you have questions over the screen, because they are kind of small and blurry. That is something that we have to work on, and so I apologize for that blurriness. We already went through the Measure U money, and with the Human Services grant funding, there is a surplus. If you decided to open up the grant funding again, the council member with the conflict may have to recuse himself. Again, Chelsea can touch more on that if that's what you guys decide to do. I do caution, though, we do not want to spend all the surplus because we are not funding capital improvements. And when you don't fund capital improvements, that just recommends more expenses because as the longer you not do those, it costs more money. And then we also have a couple positions that we didn't fund, possibly a comp and class study that might produce a deficit in salaries. We are still in the recovery phase from the prior council getting rid of all the staff, and it is very expensive to hire people. It is very difficult. You want to keep your staff because it is so expensive to replace them, and you lose city knowledge as well. So with that, I will turn it back over for questions.
Questions?
Yeah. Wendy, what is our capital improvement budget for?
It depends on the projects, and
Yeah.
right now we don't have that. But we like currently for this year, general fund is 1.1 million, and we've done $330,000 of that so far.
So we're budgeted to spend 1.3, and we're
For 23-24. I don't have the
For-
costs
okay.
for 24-25
Yeah, there's no capital expenses on your chart here for
There-
the other years.
They're not on there because we don't have them approved by Planning Commission, and we have to have those approved.
Are those capital expenditures, do they include road improvements and things of that nature?
Yes, but the different funds will, can fund roads and streets projects.
Parts of it?
Yeah.
And that, the general fund funds the rest of it? Is that?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
So, obviously, there are some restricted funds. Measure A funds can also fund roads and streets. There was a commitment of the Measure U committee for $250,000 for road and street repairs, I believe. So there are those. I'm also working with staff, again, as part of the new and improved administration here, to be more realistic about the estimates and the goal, the capital improvement projects. Let's not go and tie up on or commit funds to things that we're not sure we can get done. Again, bandwidth has a lot to do with the reasons why a lot of these things haven't been delivered in the past. I'm also working with our grant writers to find funds so we could better leverage what funds we do have and not end up paying for the whole thing ourselves and utilize state and or federal funds. So it's a combination effort, but that will come forward in August. Will be a much more realistic, I'll call it, effort as far as the capital programs are concerned.
On that point, Randy and Wendy, because we were reminded of the FEMA funding, but FEMA is really budget or fund-specific monies. And I know that it's not in this 24-25 budget. It's excluded, which is probably the correct thing to do. But when is it realistic to assume we will see those FEMA reimbursements in the next 12-month period?
If we, right now, FEMA is still reviewing all our expenses. I don't know how realistic that would be to get reimbursed in 24-25, just because I don't know where they are with that process. Do you have a question?
I have a comment.
Oh, okay.
Well, one more before you comment, Randy. So where I was going with that, that money should go into the Works and Engineering budget, correct? It should go toward the funding for where road repair and maintenance occurs.
It depends on where those funds were expensed from. So if you had a water well down, then the FEMA money would.
Yeah, it was for
would go
Alice Howe
back
Road,
into
right?
water.
It was Roger's money.
There was water lines underneath it.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, okay.
So there was multiple
Okay.
accounts that were affected by that
Yeah.
construction.
I do not know how much was coming out of the general fund because Roger's been handling that.
So we're being more prudent, I think, than some jurisdictions, at least ones that I've worked with in the past, that include forecast revenues in their budget. And when they aren't realized, you end up in trouble, because that's the worst thing that can happen, is to count on that money coming in and then spend it and then not get it. So,
Yeah, we didn't count on it, right? We're not counting.
no, that's what I was pointing out. We
But
have not
it's
factored that in.
owed in some way, right?
We are owed the money. We can book it as whatever, as accounts receivable. But again, it's not a good idea to try and spend that until you know. The better option is to wait until we do get it, and then if we need to spend it, bring it back with unanticipated revenue and ask to spend it. I inquired of Roger at 6:15 this evening what the latest was on the FEMA reimbursement. And he said everything's been submitted. The restoration work was completed because there was a lot of damage, and then we had to do some restoration on the slope there. He said, I expect to have a conversation with the FEMA rep this week. I will inquire on the time frame at that time as far as when we might expect reimbursement. But as of right now, we don't know. And as I've expressed to many individuals in my past, my prior work was, a lot of my prior work was in public works. And my old public works director used to, and you could substitute the F word, but FEMA is an acronym for frustrating endless maze of aggravation. And his opinion, and my observation is, if you get 50% of the money you spend, you're doing pretty good. So the hope is we get 100% of the round figures $900,000 that we've expended. But it's not a good idea to bank on that.
I was
until you have it in your
contacted
hand.
by FEMA asking for me to confirm emails and phone numbers for staff here. So they're going to be contacting us presumably. And so that was encouraging, I thought, but that doesn't guarantee anything. It just means they've got our contact information verified.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Does FEMA have marriage counseling? You made a comment about the grant writing's pessimism.
Robert, your
Microphone.
Sorry. You made a comment about the grant writing's pessimism. What was the comment that you made about reliant upon grant writing from us, looking for money from the state?
So what I'm looking, we've hired a grant writer, and my goal is to not totally rely on local funds to pay for these various projects. There's a lot of grants out there, and with their assistance, I hope to be able to leverage our money so that, for instance, a good example is this Friedenborg Canyon trail that Roger was in here recently to get permission to go to design on. That's a couple $1 million probably project. And if we can get federal or state money to pay some percentage of that, that's less money we have to pay.
Correct. Okay, and you've got a state that's roughly anywhere from $24 to $78 billion in the red. I mean, how optimistic can you possibly be about getting money from the state for the projects that we want?
I'm not particularly optimistic this year, but there's no guarantee that project will happen this year. There's also federal money, and I'm a firm believer you don't get anything you don't ask for, so it never hurts to ask.
Okay. I have a commentary, but no more questions.
Andy, does this budget include the 200,000 we just allocated for GSA?
Yes, but that's in the water fund.
It's in the water. Thank you.
And with the blue folder item that came before you, it talked about the restricted balance that we have to have in order to maintain operations in case of an emergency. I just wanted you guys to know that when we have to have a percentage of our expenses, we have to have 6 to 8 months in reserves to fund in case there's a major event. And as our expenses go up, so will that reserve target. We won't know until we're audited and the year end closes what that amount will be.
I have a question and then a request. Wendy, could you pull up the table 2 that's on page 209? And while you're doing that question, you're on, yeah. We have 683,000 in surplus as we go into 2024. That's the budget we're looking at right now. What has been in years past the amount of surplus that we had revenue to expenses when we entered into new fiscal year budgets? I want to look for where does this fit in proportionality?
So if you look at page 254, we had a quick math in 22-23. We had that's like 3 million minus 1.4. So as at the end of 22-23, we put like 1.6 million into reserves. And then 23-24, we will actually, if the revenue's what we predicted and the expenditures what we predicted, we will actually decrease the fund balance, so there won't be a surplus in 23-24. But based on our Measure U projections, it's like way more than what we expected.
That's why I wanted to see table, and that was, those numbers you just gave us, that was across all the funds, not just general fund, correct?
No, that was just general fund.
Okay. And then on table 2?
Yeah, let me get there.
Yeah, I just want to clarify so it's not confused again.
Yeah. What are you on, 209?
Oh, table 2.
Yeah, page 209, yeah.
Hang on. That's not in OpenGov. So that is. Hang on, it has to download.
That could take a while. It's got to download the entire.
It'll be fast. Sorry. So anyways, okay. So while
Okay,
it's
so
downloading-
here's what I want to make sure that my peers understood, that the proposed budget for 24-25 is increasing in all of the fund balances.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes. So we are net positive in every category.
Yes. But understand that all the other funds are restricted.
Understood, yes.
Okay.
But you show a water fund that's going negative.
No,
is
the water
already
fund
negative?
is positive, 328,000 at the end of 24-25.
Where are you seeing that? Is that back on 150, 254?
Pardon?
What page are you seeing that on, please?
Table 2, this table here. So page 209.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay, hang on.
Speed up.
The water fund right here.
Yeah, I see it. 328,000 net change. Okay,
Net change is, if it's a positive number, it's an increase.
thank you.
Yeah.
Let me ask a couple questions. What's our reserve fund right now? The amount?
Our reserve fund balance?
Yeah.
With all the funds, it's like 32 million.
Reserve?
Well, the reserve fund balance, the 32 million is all the funds together. And the only fund that we have flexibility in is the general fund. And that currently is 10 million, but the restricted portion is, I believe, like 8 million.
Okay. The 8 million then is the reserve in the general fund.
Yes. Well, you have unrestricted and restricted. Restricted, we can't touch.
Within general fund?
Within general fund.
Okay.
We have $10 million
Right.
that we can spend on operations that is flexible.
Okay.
That's also on that same table,
So,
Mark.
If you go
look at
down
the-
to.
It's a simple table.
Page 254 again, your favorite little eye chart. It shows under the general fund, balances at the end of '23 of 10.3 million, then it drops to 7.6, goes up to 8.3, and then goes down to 6.9.
Correct. That is the unrestricted portion.
And it
which,
doesn't even include all the capital expenditures either.
Correct.
So we're
So-
dropping in what we have in the funds over the years.
Correct. In 22, 23, we went, at the end of 22, fiscal year 22, we had 8 million. At the end of 23, we had 10 million, but that's because there was no staff and there was nothing being done.
Right.
So our expenses were a lot less. At the end of 24, which is this fiscal year that ends at the end of this month,
Right.
if we complete the capital projects, the fund balance will be 7.6 million, which is $3 million, well, $2.4 million less than the prior year.
Right.
Yes. And then if you look at 24, 25, the projected balance at the end is
8.3.
8.3, but that does not include
Capital.
capital projects.
So it looks like it's going down every year.
Yes, it does go down with capital improvement projects, which is why you want to have a surplus of revenue over expenses, because that overage funds those capital improvement projects, which is why you have a 10-year plan, because you plan it out based on your revenue and expenses. You plan out your capital improvement project, so you don't, and you, like, you say you buy a new city hall. You take that portion, so over the 10 years, you have a forecast.
I understand.
And you use that to plan out your capital improvement project, so you don't use all your money in like 1 year.
But even without the capital improvement projects in the 24, 25, and 25, 26, it's decreasing.
Correct.
So we're running out of money without even doing the capital expenditures.
If our revenue stays the same and our expenses stay the same, eventually, yes. Which is why we need to do our due diligence and do our budget properly with the right forecasts and the timing of the capital improvement projects.
Mr. Murphy?
Yeah. Which is also why the TOT measure is important, because that gives us additional revenue. This also excludes the Measure U funds that are there. So by working with the Measure U committee, and, because that's a totally separate fund, that's 207.
Yeah. It's over here. Yeah, you're
Yeah, so, I mean, the idea is working with the Measure U committee to identify things that are consistent with the intent of the voters would free up some general fund monies as well.
Yes. We will need the Measure U money to fund the general fund
To fund the
expenses.
general fund, yes.
Yes.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
On top of the almost $500,000 that we've supported the senior center with for the miscalculation on the labor, and I know a lot of people are here tonight to discuss this, with the waiving of fees, the $500,000, the $450,000, et cetera, is there a total dollar amount that you have that we've helped them out with this year?
I do believe it's an in-kind of 120,000.
Well, I shared some information before. The value of what it would be for the hall itself, the rental was about 120,000, 126, I believe.
But the whole package is what I'm
But,
saying.
and then there was another almost $100,000 in waive fees and other in-kind services. actual cost to the city is much less than that. That's just the value of those things.
Correct.
Be careful with those numbers, because that is not an actual representation of what we collect in rental for vets halls. What is the actual number
So
that we
the
collect?
current, over the last 3 fiscal years, including this one, which is not quite complete, we received about $120,000 in rental for the Veterans Hall.
For 3 years or per year?
No, over the 3 years.
3 years.
So it's
For 3
actual
years.
about 40,000, and they are also working cooperatively with us to vacate the portion, the Legion Wing, when necessary, so that the actual impact to the budget will be less. But again, if we were to have made an arrangement with them to rent them the space over the year and a half or so that they're going to be in it, it would have been about $126,000. So that's the value of it. It's not the actual cost.
But that's what I was asking was, on top of the $450,000 that we gave already, and then the waiver of fees, et cetera, is there a total dollar amount for that the city has expended to help the senior center? Do we know that? I'm not putting you on the spot.
No, I'm just saying, again, it depends how you define that, because, like I said, they're the value of the fees, the development fees and things that we've not collected or otherwise waived. It was 98,000, just under 100,000. But some of that is, again, staff time. It's not actual cost in the truest sense, although the whole purpose of the fees is to capture and reimburse actual costs. But for purposes of this discussion, what does it actually cost us? I believe that number is much closer to $10,000 or $20,000, not 99,000.
Okay.
Could I just make one request? We really need to be careful with the numbers that we talk about verbally, because we made some decisions in the last meeting where we were given misinformation or changing information. The information has been updated tonight. We are not in the negative by $1 million. And even the Measure U team was actually told, the committee was told, that we were going to be negative revenue to expenses $1 million. So you complied. And we complied in the last decision. So we have got to be careful about the numbers that we share, the value, a theoretical value for Vets Hall, if we were to rent it every day, which we don't, right, is over $100,000. We've never collected more revenue. I've read every single line of those budgets, more than $41,000 a year for Vets Hall, for rental, never. And the expenses for operational expenses have never been more than $12,000 a year for utilities and water. So we have to be factual about the numbers that you share with us, because you're asking us to make decisions in a 30-minute window. Okay, please.
And we were in the negative. Without the Measure U money, we would be in a deficit with this current budget.
Public comment. Let's get going.
Okay, let's go to public comment, please. I've got 2 requests. Linda Marzullo.
Good evening. I'm Linda Marzullo. I represent Bethania Tuesday Food Distribution, and I really appreciate your support in funding us a potential $2,000 for our food distribution in the budget. However, what I'm hearing is there's a lot more money here available to the nonprofits. We're all struggling. None of us are really asking for that much when we're looking at $2 million that you have available to give to increase the quality of life for residents in the San Ynez Valley and in Solvang. We distribute 50 weeks out of the year. People Helping People has cut back to only 2 weeks out of the month. So we're distributing to the majority of people who need food in our area. Our youngest client is 13. She had to come and ask for food because her family had no food to feed her. Our oldest client just turned 94. He needs help because he has outlived his savings and he has no food. We serve mothers who bring their children, fathers who are working several jobs, households that don't have enough money to cover the food bill on top of the utilities and the rent. Solvang is very expensive to live in. So these are the people who work in the service industry, in the agricultural and field worker jobs, who keep our hotels running, who keep our businesses running and clean and going. And we have single-parent households, caregivers and nurses. We've helped teachers, elderly adults, disabled person, and teens. It would be very helpful to us when we're spending so much money that we have to raise. We're all volunteer. Nobody gets paid. We have no expenses. We have no administrative costs. All funds that are donated go directly into the program. If you could consider granting us what we asked for, or at least close to that amount. We asked for $15,000. You gave us $10,000 last year. That just really doesn't even cover 2 months' worth of food purchases for local residents. So I would like you to reconsider what you're giving us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to have a tough time with this name. I think it's David. Why? Way? Why?
H-U-A-N-G?
No. It's W-Y.
Hi.
Yeah, please.
Anyway, I'm David.
Hi,
Mayor,
David.
Council. Can you hear me? Good. Linda is the heart and soul of our distribution. I'm just a volunteer, but I really respect her, and so she asked me to talk about some numbers with you guys today. So hopefully they're not too confusing, but let's get started. So remember 2010, or not 210. That's the average number of households we have served every Tuesday night, as she's mentioned, 50 weeks a year. From 210, we can get 840 individuals because our households are about 4 individuals each. So now we have 840 individuals that we're serving every Tuesday night. And when we package boxes and bags, we sort of estimate that these are like 2 servings per individual. So in theory, we're serving about 1,680 servings every Tuesday night, feeding our population here. Speaking of our population, we did a recent survey of all of our registered users, and 164 households actually have Solvang zip codes. So that's quite a few. And actually, if you do the math, it's about 78% of our clients live in the Solvang area. And so these are the people, as Linda has mentioned, who help us or help keep the city going and so on and so forth. Another big number to remember, which we really shouldn't, is a little over $10,000. And that's actually the amount of money that Linda and Donna have spent in the first 4 months of 2024. And so if you do all the math, and it's all pretty straightforward math, we are feeding people at the cost of 70 cents per person. That's a pretty good bargain if you think about it. I mean, you can't go to the store and get, 2 servings for 70 cents. So we've really, leveraged ourselves. And so anyway, as Linda mentioned, we asked for $15,000 before. We'll sell for $10,000. We'll tighten our budget too. And, if you can, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That's all the requests I have at this point. Do I have anybody else in the audience that wants to? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Kathleen Campbell, and I am a homeowner in Solvang and part of the fundraising for the capital campaign for the Solvang Senior Center. I have sent each of you individually some background on what I think is important about distinguishing the Senior Center between the capital campaign and especially the additional costs that you helped with, which was $450,000 to help us meet the increased cost due to the prevailing wage. And so I think you have my comments about how important the center is on an ongoing basis, sort of along the lines of the food program. When I looked at the percentage of what you allocated last time, the 69,000, if I took out Danish days and things that were 1 or 2 or 3 day programs, parades, you funded 27,000 to human service type contracts. which was about 39% of the total. So what I am standing here today is I've communicated, I think, how important I think organizations that deliver services 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year are to your community, and how expensive it would be if you had to add those. You see what adding labor is. I added in the budget. You got the salaries, and then you got the health benefits, and then you got the retirement, and you've got everything else. So you have organizations that are delivering these services to you about as cost effectively as you can ever receive them to provide ongoing services. What I'm standing here to say tonight is not only to advocate for the senior center, but to advocate not to take $683,000 out of your budget, but for you to look at, I heard some discussion last time about a cap. Dave mentioned that at one point. Elizabeth used a goal 2 weeks ago. Maybe you can find a level that's not as strong as it was last year, but then you can revisit some worthy organizations that need to be looked at. I hope you'll think favorably about the center when you look at that, but I think broadly you're supporting important things your citizens use, and you should consider that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else that wants to talk? Speak to us? We don't have anybody on Zoom. We'll bring it back to the council.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
So the first thing that needs to be decided, which actually, Member Brown, I think you have to step out for this based on your prior recusal, is whether or not you want to revisit the human services grants. And then if you do, Member Brown would have to stay out for any Atterdag at home vote. But because a decision to revisit the human services grants could affect Atterdag at home, I think you need to, I would recommend that you recuse for that as well.
If the discussion would go that way, I would excuse myself.
Yeah, and I'm recommending that be the first question before the council, because we can't go forward with the rest of the budget without getting past that threshold and having you participate.
Okay.
I'd propose that we revisit the Human Services Fund proposal.
Okay, so.
That's a motion?
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Well, hold on,
Wait a minute.
if we can stop, I'm saying Member Brown should recuse and leave prior to that vote.
But if it's a vote just to talk about all of it, he's not.
The decision to talk about it and revisit it would affect Atterdag. If the answer is no, then he can come back. But, so that would be my recommendation.
If you have to ask, recuse.
I will
If you
excuse
could-
myself, and I would appreciate a recall, or somebody get me out.
We'll come get you.
And-
There are things here I'd like to be a part of.
And Member Brown, if you could just state briefly that the conflict is
I have a conflict, a marital issue whereby my wife works with Atterdag at Home, which is one of the beneficiaries of the Human Services Grant. So I'll excuse myself at this time.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Before we get started, I'd just like to let you guys know that in 22-23, the grant funding applications that we received totaled $476,000. The fiscal year 22-23 that were approved was $420,000, and 2 of those were not funded because they did not qualify with all the requirements. And for 23-24, we had $426,000 that was requested, and we funded $316,000, just for your information.
Okay, you want to make a motion?
Well, I'd like to make some comments first about
All
the
right.
human. Do we need to make the motion on the Human Fund Services revisit? Is that what we need to do?
So
Yeah.
Member Brown can participate in everything but one, a vote to reopen the Human Services grants, and a vote on any changes to Atterdag. So my suggestion would be to make the motion that we're reopening the Human Services and then address Atterdag, and then he can come back for discussions about the other grants and let him participate in as much as possible. But, your discretion, whether when you want to make your comments. But yeah, that's how I would structure it to let him participate as much as possible.
Okay, I'll make a motion to open the Human Services Grant Funding discussion.
I'll second it.
Councilmember Clark.
No.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown absent. Mayor Infante.
No.
Motion fails.
Can I make a couple comments? I'm okay with the,
Since it failed, we can bring Mr. Clark back?
Yes,
I
'cause
mean,
you're not-
Mr. Brown back, we'll leave Clark here.
Yeah, because you're not moving forward with changing the human services grants.
You wanna, can somebody go get him? Oh, there he is, all right.
You give, and then when you can't have enough, you're bad.
Thanks, Laser. Okay, so we didn't reopen the grants. Yes, ma'am, you're up.
yeah, my comments are, I really have no issues with the budget that was put forward, except for what's missing from the budget. There's some really obvious things that are missing. Clearly, the chamber is missing from the budget. We have historically given services to the nonprofits, and we have omitted the senior center from, which is one of the standing line items in the budget as grant funding. We've omitted them while we've committed large dollars in capital funding, but we have really knocked them off at their knees for this full 12 months by not giving them any operational budget. This is contradictory to me, why we would fund them for using general fund money, why we would fund them for a labor shortage and not, or a prevailing wage increase and not help them operate this year. It just seems totally at conflict. We have put a few things into the budget that I'm surprised at, given where we are in helping the community and providing just a intent for wellness of the residents and the community at large. Here's what we've put into the budget. We put $25,000 for fireworks. We put $10,000 for a parade, $30,000 for 3 more parades. We funded a car show. We've got $125,000 for Yule Fest, which is growing to $440,000 the follow-on year. It's in there. We have $25,000 in for special events, part-time help. We have $1.3 million in marketing spend. That's $805,000 for traditional marketing and $500,000 for the Visit SYB T-Bit.
Is this discussion before?
No, we
a
don't
vote
pay for
or
that.
after a vote?
Yeah,
We
yes,
don't
we
pay
do.
for
Is this
that.
the
We
plan- is
collect
this where
it
we're
and
going
give it to SYB and take 2%.
I know, but is this where we're going now, where we're
That's
gonna
in the budget.
state our opinions after a vote?
If
Okay,
I
so-
can clarify, the vote was, sorry, Mayor, do you want me to
You're fine.
clarify?
Please, go
Okay.
ahead.
Or
The vote was simply to whether or not to open the Human Resources Grant. What's left for the council to discuss is the preliminary budget adoption. And
Which
so,
is what I'm discussing.
so I think the comments now are related to the preliminary
But
budget.
we'll go to Wendy, all right? The T-bid for San Ynez Valley, we don't pay that, correct?
No, we actually get a percentage.
We get
We're the
2% off
pass-through,
the top
we're the
for working.
pass-through agency, and we get an administrative fee for that.
So it shows in the budget, but that is not an expense to the city.
I'll revise my comment. We spend $805,000 on marketing. We spend $84,000 a year to water the flower plants in the village.
I'm sorry, are we on to E now?
This is E.
Okay, it wasn't formal, so I didn't know. We had voted and then it just became a commentary.
Oh, sorry. So for Mr. Clark, what we did was of the budget in E.
Okay.
We took out the part whether we should open up the grant funding. We left that
Correct.
alone. We didn't open that up. Now we're discussing the approval of the budget.
Thank you.
As
And
I
I'm
understand.
pointing out what's in the budget that feels like we should revisit it.
Well, I'm going to reply because, yeah, I agree. We should revisit the budget, but not this year. And this budget is preliminary. It doesn't have all the information. You're going to be updating it and coming back to us next council
Well,
meeting?
If you don't make any changes tonight, this will be the numbers that come before you on the 24th.
Okay.
It will just be in a whole entire budget book presentation. So the numbers will stay the same.
Unless we
And-
discuss a few line items.
Correct. This is the time that you guys discuss it
Okay.
and recommend any changes, which is why we do it tonight and then have the final on the 24th.
Thank you. You want to make a point, Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, I was gonna point out a couple of things. Again, this budget as it's presented tonight does not have two positions filled for, only filled for 6 months. So one of the positions is some additional parks help that could potentially reduce the amount for watering the flowers. So it would be potentially offset by that if that's an option or a direction the council would wish to give. The other position that is only funded for 6 months is a management analyst. And the reason those positions were only budgeted for 6 months is when we originally started the process, we believed we had a $2 million deficit and we were working to fill the hole. So those positions, there was a third position removed. That was for the administrative help for planning and public works. But given all of the issues, that was one of the things we put back in this preliminary budget. My request would be to, if we're going to make the changes, given there's a little bit of surplus that we do have, is to put those two other positions back in the budget. The total impact would be about $150,000. That's all benefits and everything included. The reason for that, again, is to give the Parks Department that third position that they need to help do the work that needs to be done. And again, for the management analyst, which would be an assistant, or assist rather, in the duties, administrative duties for things that are not getting done currently and or interfering with my and other department head staff ability to be more specific in some of the other goals that they need to accomplish.
So, Randy, I missed what you said. Are you saying we're in the budget, there's 6 months worth of new hires, is that right? All of the new hires?
There's a third position that is for the whole year, but yes, the other two positions are only half the year.
And which is the full-time equivalent?
That would be the administrative assistant for planning and public works. That's to help get, the council provided direction in the goal setting that we did. And one of the big things was to deal with, well, one of the items was the idea of updating the codes and things and make this whole process more business friendly and applicant friendly. And that's a critical role that was identified. So it was added in the budget and so initially was kept out for 6 months because of the deficit. But when we determined that we had a little bit more money because of the decisions and the recommendation made by the Measure U committee, we added that back in. So that position is fully funded for the entire year. The other two positions we cut back to 6 months are only in there ideally to begin on January 1, or at least that was the idea. But given the importance of the goals and some of the other accomplishments that we are working toward getting done and not be delayed by 6 months, my request would be for you to add those two or allow adjustment to the budget to put those in for the entire year.
Can you, Randy, please repeat the dollar amount that
It's
would?
approximately $150,000 additional cost for the, and again, that's a loaded, but benefited, all rolled up into those numbers.
Mhm.
A little bit less than that, but for purposes of round figures, it's about 150,000.
So let's move this along. What are we doing now?
Well, why wouldn't we also delay on that hire just to sort of wait and see how the projections pan out?
Well, that's certainly an option in what we did and purposes of that, but, or why we originally planned it that way. But the delay will impact the delivery of other things.
Yeah, I agree. I do not agree with delaying those if we can get them in here. As a matter of fact, do you have the costs in here for the new utility manager?
Yes, that's
Okay.
in there.
So that's
the
already
budgeted
in here
amount.
anyway. What about the wastewater treatment plant?
That is not in here. That's a capital project.
Right. And that's going to be huge, and that's not even in this.
That is not in
so
this
far,
budget,
Any
no.
place.
That is a separate fund, though. That's not general fund.
Correct.
I understand, but it's, I'm.
Since I was not in town on Friday, I did not do my weekly update for the council. I've shared with you that we submitted congressional earmark request, both through Carvajal's office and Senator Butler. This is at the federal level. Carvajal's office responded recently, which I did share, that our $14 million earmark request has moved forward to the next level, and that's not been approved yet, but it is moved on. And I also got confirmation this last week, Wednesday or Thursday, that Butler's office has moved it on to the next level. So the ask in each of those cases was for 80% of the wastewater treatment plant projected cost, so about $14 million. The fact that they're both moved it to the next level suggests that it would have support at the federal level at both houses of government. So obviously still no guarantee we'll see the money, but it has cleared the first hurdle.
And 14 million is not the total cost.
No, it's approximately 18 million is the total cost.
Yeah.
So it's about 80%.
Okay. All right, so.
We're
Are
unlikely
we
to
on
find
60 right
$14
now?
million
No, we're on
anytime
60.
soon.
Yeah, we're in 60. Well,
Yeah, so,
80.
so
So-
the budget if the budget as presented includes the positions that you say we need to fill to tackle all of these projects that we put on the staff, and we still end up with a projected combined surplus of, that's with everything?
Yeah.
We're not, I understand that
Yeah.
we're not talking about capital improvements, and that's why it's important to have a surplus, because that's what we're going to use to
Right.
fund those capital improvements. But I just don't see why we can't consider 10% of our surplus towards human grant services if, we made the decision to fund the grants last time based on the money that we have, and now we have a little more. I just feel like we can do better than we are doing right now.
We just voted that down.
Okay, well then,
we certainly can do better.
yeah, okay. Well then,
So there's one other thing that's pretty important that's not in the budget, and that's the Chamber of Commerce. There's literally zero.
This is not-
There's not even a relationship.
okay,
There's,
well then,
there's no money in the budget for the chamber, and I was outlining what is missing in the budget.
okay.
So what are we doing about that?
It was issued.
Please tell her about that.
So,
Project specific. Excuse me.
so specific to the chamber, there was discussion with them, and we will work out a service contract with them to provide. They will provide services. So we will provide a sponsorship for things like State of the City, or maybe music in the parks. So we have an ability to provide some level of support. It may not be as much as they've gotten in the past, but
Do you have
eliminate
it earmarked in the budget, Randy? It's not in
It
there.
is not currently in the budget, no.
And so what number would you recommend for that?
I've told them I would request $25,000.
For State of the City?
I'm
No,
sorry,
it's for 3 different events.
for the part for the maps, part for the state of the city, and part for the music in the park.
And did that come with substantiated costs or estimates?
It's a service agreement that we would sponsor those events.
This is off topic.
Part of the budget.
I understand that. But we had already discussed the chamber's situation. I thought we were very clear that specific projects, we would deal with the chamber and work out an arrangement to fund those projects.
Well, we didn't discuss it on the council. I don't recall that discussion. What discussion are we referring
It was
to?
discussed in the ad hoc committee and the amount of the.
That wasn't brought forward
Are we gonna
to the
reopen this whole
council.
thing then?
Because it was within the expenditure authority of the city manager, has not come back to council.
But it wasn't part of the recommendations. What the ad hoc committee was for the Human Services Grant Fund.
That was part of the reasoning, though, that the ad hoc committee had for not putting any money in there.
It just wasn't in the discussion.
Okay. Do you want to start this whole process all over again? And I'm not mocking by saying that. If you want to start this whole thing all over again, I'm fine. Get a new ad hoc committee, revisit everything.
We have to have a budget
I'll
adopted
second
by
that.
the June
I'll second
30th,
that.
It wasn't a motion.
Okay. We have to have a budget approved by when?
The end of, by June 30th.
Okay, so we need to get something approved tonight so that you can finalize it and bring it back to us in the next meeting.
You just need to decide if there's any changes
To this.
to what's presented before you tonight. And then the final adoption will be on the 24th.
So this is an opportunity,
I'd like
right?
to give
It-
staff
it's a-
direction to move forward with I don't think this requires a vote at this juncture, but correct me if I'm wrong, but just direction would be to modify the budget to include the positions that have been left out. And that'd be my recommendation.
Is that a motion?
Well, wait. Do you bring back therapeutic writing and
This is just-
bring back solving music?
No, I'm
No,
not,
this is-
no, I'm just saying the positions, the city positions that have been left out, that would, the analytical.
Parks
They're-
person
they're-
and a management analyst.
Management analyst.
Okay, sorry, but Randy, those are included. There are two,
They're included for 6 months.
Right.
My request was to fund them for the full year.
and
Which
that
is
would
not-
add $150,000.
About $150,000, yes, additional.
Wow.
Not per, that's
That
combined.
motion then, to add the 150,000 to this budget and approve it?
Yes, I'll make that a motion.
Do I have a second? I'll second it.
And to be clear, the motion is to fund the parks and admin services positions for a full year.
Parks and management analyst. for the
Excuse me,
full year.
management analyst position for a full year and approve the rest of the preliminary budget.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
No.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Really feel it's irresponsible to approve these things when we don't have the evidence of the requirements and the work that would be done. So that's a no.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
Thank you.
Okay, closing council comments. You got anything you want to say?
Yeah, it was recommended by a constituent that we investigate or perhaps put rumble strips along in different locations along Friedensborg Canyon Road as it comes into Atterdag or that direction for speeding, to slow down speeders. So rumble strips.
We'll look into it.
Thank you.
That can be part of the engineering for the Friedensborg Canyon upgrade, right?
Well, yeah, it would be potentially part of that project overall, but I was just kind of smiled because there's a claim because of the potholes on that road, and those kind of serve as a natural
speed
traffic
impediment.
calming.
But I mean, the sunlight is so bad, whatever time of year you're on that road. They're speeding on that road.
They
I
are,
understand
unfortunately.
Viborg because it's open and clear, but that's just silly that people would be that reckless on that street.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will call this council meeting to complete at 9:00.